My name is Jennifer.
Perfect. Okay, Jennifer. And how many children do you have?
I have two girls.
Okay. And do both have special needs or just one?
Just my littlest one,
Okay. And what is her name?
Sophia.
Sophia. Okay. And how old is Sophia?
She is 7.5.
Oh, that's such a fun age. Does Sophia have a diagnosis?
Yes. So her diagnosis is it's a very, very rare neuromuscular disease. It's called actin myopathy, ACTIN. It's under the umbrella of anemoline myopathy. It's very
Okay.
rare.
Does that kind of fall into like the SMA type myopathies as well?
It's not a progressive, and it's
Okay.
not neurological. So actin myopathy is it's a genetic disease. Hers is de novo, so it wasn't inherited. So what it is that in our genes, in our muscles, we have what's called actin, and the actin is what helps the muscles to contract and to be able to move. Well, hers is duplicated. And so because it's duplicated, it's considered where it's damaged. Her muscles are damaged. So her muscles can't move.
Okay.
So because of that, she is immobile. She can't breathe on her own. So because of her diaphragm, which is a muscle, doesn't have the muscle tone to be able to move, to expand. So she's on a ventilator for that. She's nonverbal because she just doesn't have the muscle strength to be able to orally make the sounds. But otherwise, she's neurologically sound, all there. It's just all skeletal.
Okay. And has has her condition changed much since her original diagnosis, or has it been pretty stable?
It's been pretty stable, and that's the one thing about her diagnosis is it's not progressive, so it's not going to get worse. But there is no treatment. It's because it's so rare. There's very, very few studies that are being done on it. So there's no possible clinical trials to help, like SMA has right now. There's just nothing out there that they're even trying. So it's not going to get better, but it's not going to get worse.
Okay.
So no, we haven't. I mean, even with therapy, as far as her muscle movement, I mean, there's been a little bit in maybe her fingers, a little bit in her hands, but it's not something that's ever going to be enough to where she'll be able to be independent.
Okay. Okay. So with her not being able to verbally speak, how do you guys
Mm-hmm.
communicate with her?
So we have a communication device. It's called, we use the Tobii Dynavox eye gaze. We use Snap and Core software. And with that, she's able to go and tell us if something's hurting her, if she wants something, if she just wants to, say hi, or she wants you to go away. She'll say, bye, potato head.
By Potato Head. That's cute.
I don't know where she got that from, but that's just, that's just what we use it for as far as communication software. She has now been able to expand where she can actually use her eyes to go and navigate the internet.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. So she can use it to go to websites, to watch cartoons on YouTube, and do educational apps and all that. So
That is really cool.
it is. It is.
How did you guys come across that system?
I don't even know how it was first brought into the conversation. We had to go through a lot of speech therapists to find one that even did anything with communication. Most of them, for like the first 3 years of her life, all they wanted to focus on was oral motor skills and feeding. And at that point, it was like, we're not going to be able to ever be able to do feeding by mouth. She's not going to have the strength to be able to speak where outsiders would be able to understand her. So I had to go through a lot of different speech therapists until we found one that really helped us to understand how to get Sophia to actually use it. because when we did get it, she did great for a little while with it, and then she decided that she just didn't want to do it and closed her eyes for the next year and a half every single time we pulled it out in front of her.
Gosh.
So,
That
yeah.
sounds about right.
Yeah, she started kindergarten. She just wouldn't use it at all, and it was just very hard to do school when she can't be verbal. But with an amazing speech therapist, she's made huge progress, and now she's telling us all kinds of things.
That is so cool. I love that there's so many augmented communication things out there, because and that's such a huge barrier for so many kids. They're nonverbal. And once you
It
find a
is.
way to let them, express themselves, it totally changes everything. That's
And they want to be able to express themselves, and there's just so many different, like you said, there's so many different, AAC devices, and can be low tech, high tech. There's so many ways out there. It takes a lot of research, sometimes, and it just takes trying a lot of different things. But kids, kids with special needs, they want to be able to tell us, go away, potato head.
exactly. How could she ever tell you that without that really cool tool? That is too cute. Oh, wow. Did you guys try some of the low tech ones as well, like just the vision boards and things like that? Or did you guys go
Well,
straight to the bigger one?
well, what we were trying when she wouldn't use it is just, I could take her wrist, and she could tap
Okay.
the right or wrong answer. So that's what we were doing pretty much for the first year and a half of school. It's just, I would have to sit, with her while the teacher, was asking questions. We'd put yes or no, or whatever was the correct answer and whatever's the wrong answer in front of her, and just help her to be able to move to yes or no. So we tried. We tried.
Yeah, but no, I love that she's able to navigate the web and watch whatever
Yeah.
she wants on her. I'm guessing
Yeah.
on like a computer or an iPad or something, she's able to just kind of pull up whatever she wants to watch, and that is so
Yeah.
cool.
Hers is a computer.
A computer.
Um, it is available. Snap and Core is available on the iPad, but iPad is not eye gaze compatible.
Okay.
So we have a special computer that's compatible with Windows, so she can actually go into and just use her eyes as a mouse on the internet. And
So
um, yeah.
that's really so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Wow. So you mentioned that you have another daughter as well, and
Hmm.
she's
Hmm.
older.
She is. She's 17.
She's 17. How is it going from having a typically developing child to a child with severe medical issues?
It was hard. So Caitlin, that's her name. She was 9.5 when Sophia was born. So she went from being an only child and getting all of the attention to having a sibling with very special medical needs. And it was hard on her. It was hard. We were in the hospital for 3 months, and um, it was hard because I stayed at the hospital. And so suddenly mom wasn't around as much, or she was living at the hospital with me during the day. And then when we came home, it was suddenly a house filled with therapists and nurses and case managers and medical supplies. And she didn't have attention anymore, that we could give her, because we were just trying to survive. Bringing her home, we were just trying to survive all the lack of sleep and learning how to use all the equipment. And but she's doing okay now.
She's adjusted and
Yeah.
how to kind of get your time separate. And I'm sure it's a juggling. It's a lot
Yeah.
to have a medically involved child, and it's a lot to have non-involved children, and to have
Hmm.
both and to try to balance that. I'm sure it's a challenge to figure all that out.
Yeah. Well, now that she's 17 and she has her car, and she doesn't want to be around us anyway, so
Now she's a teen, right? Yeah, teenagers are a whole different breed. Exactly. That's another challenge all by itself.
yes.
That's fun. Oh wow. So when you had Sophia, did you find out about her diagnosis before she was born, or like when did you actually find out that she was going to have a lot of special needs?
So we didn't have any idea when I was pregnant with her. I had a little bit of high blood pressure. That was the only thing. So she was born not early, but right at 37 weeks, just because of my blood pressure. She was born great. I mean, no issues. She had a little bit of feeding issues. So they ended up putting her in the NICU, just a low level NICU. But after 2 weeks, she still just wasn't feeding enough. So they transferred her to Dell. She was fine when she got to Dell Children's Hospital. And 2 days later, they were like, she's great. You can take her home. So we took her home, and it was at her 3-month doctor checkup that the doctor was concerned because she wasn't meeting any of her milestones at that time. She wasn't gaining a whole lot of weight, but nothing really serious that alerted us that there was something seriously wrong. So the doctor wanted to get her into genetics right away, or I'm sorry, not genetics, to neurology right away. So we did, and the neurologist said she is very hypotonic. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. I just know that, your stomach drops when you hear that, because it's not good, especially when they use the word very. I still hate that word, and doctors use that very.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got her in for genetic testing and then started therapy at home, and everything was fine. She started having some colds, some bronchitis issues. So we were going back and forth to the doctor. And then the last time that we went, her oxygen was a little low when we were in the doctor's office, and the doctor wanted her to be transferred to Dell just to make sure that everything was okay. So got her checked out at Dell. They said we'd be there for a couple of days. She had bronchitis. So they did a swallow study because of her low muscle tone, just to rule out anything. And they found that she was aspirating silently. We had no idea because she was not making any signs that she was aspirating. She was eating at home. Mm-hmm. So they put feeding to NG down her nose, and still just going to be there a few days. We were going to go home with the NG. The day we were supposed to go home, she just wasn't, I just got the feeling that something was wrong. Something was just not right, and I wasn't comfortable taking her home. So they had a new pulmonologist that had come on that day, and I told him my concerns, and he was concerned because of her low muscle tone that she might be having shallow breathing when she was sleeping. We had seen a few drops of her oxygen while she was sleeping at the hospital, but it was nothing that anybody was concerned about. So the doctor the next day said yes, that her CO2 wasn't being released enough when she was sleeping because of her low muscle tone. So they wanted to admit her to the intermediate unit at Dell and put her on a BiPAP. So we did that, and because we still didn't have the genetic results back yet, we didn't have a diagnosis. We didn't know if she was going to get better at some point or get worse. So the specialist there just felt like the best thing for her, the safest thing for her, would be to go ahead and have a G-tube put in rather than the NG. And so we did that. We were able to actually get her off the BiPAP right before. She was doing okay without it. She went in for the G-tube surgery, and the recovery was horrible. It was horrible because of her low muscle tone. They couldn't give her morphine because she wasn't breathing enough, and the morphine they would have had to intubate her.
Right.
So we finally got her, after a few hours, comfortable enough with Tylenol, and every time that we would start to think we were going home, one lung would collapse. So we'd be there a little bit longer, and then the other one would collapse. And then one day, while I was holding her early in the morning, both of her lungs collapsed. So she had to be intubated. And that's the day that we found out her diagnosis. The genetic results came in that day.
On that same day?
Well, that's the day the neurologist came in and finally told us. So I
Wow.
don't know if he already had them, because they had been trying to get a hold of him for several days, and he finally came in that day, and
What?
let us know.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have him anymore. That's part of the reason.
Okay. Wow.
So yeah, that's the day that he came in and told us what they had found. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, they did a muscle biopsy when she had the G-tube surgery.
Okay.
So that's what they were able to come in and tell us what they had seen and what the results from the genetics testing said. And that's when they let us know that her muscles were damaged and all that.
Okay.
So she was intubated for a week. We were able to get her on high flow nose cannula. It's been so long since she's been on that. I think it's what it's called. Yeah, the little rabbit ears is what I call it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she was doing good. We were talking about going home, and then she just started going downhill, and they just couldn't keep her CO2 blown off. Even with that, they tried BiPAP, but because of her low muscle tone, she couldn't close her mouth enough to blow off, to hold in the pressure that flows in from the BiPAP. So we were given an option between letting her go or doing tracheostomy. So definitely felt like she had so much still left, all there. So we chose to do the surgery. So we did that the day before Mother's Day, and finally got to bring her home after 3 months of
Wow.
being in the hospital. Yeah, sorry, that was a really long explanation.
No, that's a long stay to be in a hospital. I'm just trying to get a grasp on. So you went in with like no equipment at home, no medical issues, and then 3 months later,
Mm-hmm.
you went home with G-tube, with trach, with vent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing suction because of the trach and the vent.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing because of the
Mm-hmm.
pulmonary issues. And what else? Like, what all equipment did you end up going home with at the end of that 3 months?
So so suction machine, cough assist, IPV, oxygen, pulse ox machine, concentrator. Yeah, I think that was the gist
Okay.
of as far as that, the medical equipment.
And did you get to go home with nursing as well, or was it just you guys and figure it out?
No, so they wouldn't let us go home unless we had a nursing agency lined up.
Okay.
So while we were there, because we were there so long, we were able to get MDCP.
Great.
We were able to get a waiver because she had been there long enough. So actually, when we left the hospital, 2 days later, I had to, with a nurse, take her to a nursing home in
You go to,
Copper's Cove.
yep.
That
That's
was
Copper's Cove too.
yeah. Yeah,
It's
that was
thank you
pretty scary.
exactly.
They told us we had to do 24 hours. We got there about 3 p.m. and at midnight they told us we could go home. So that was a relief.
Right.
So we had to do that, and because we did that, we were able to bypass the waiting list, and get Medicaid approved retroactively because of how long we had been in the hospital and everything. And so we were able to get nursing through that waiver. But yeah, well, they wouldn't let us go home unless we had a nursing agency lined up.
Okay. And that's good and that's bad. And it's good because you have a lot going on, so you need the help, but
Mm-hmm.
then you feel like a hostage until you can get everything lined up. It's like, oh, until I get all the equipment at home and all the staff at home.
Yeah.
You
Well,
just
we had to do each one. We had to have 2 caregivers that checked off skills
okay.
for her, and that did a room in for 24 hours with her. So me and my husband are the only ones that could do that. We didn't have any family members that could do that. Not that we wouldn't, but it would have been nice to have somebody else besides me and him. So we each had every day they would have a different skill that we would have to practice on, and then they would do a check off that we accomplished that skill before we were even allowed to bring her home, just because of how complex our medical needs were. And then, like I said, we each had to, for 24 hours, had to take care of her, even though we were in the hospital, had to
Right.
take care of her completely on our own to show that we could do it. So,
Wow.
yeah, that took about 2.5 weeks to be able to do all that. Because my husband was working long days, still is. He's a UPS driver. And
Oh,
so he would have to be working 11 hours and then come in after he got off work and do skills check. So, yeah.
wow. Were you working before you had Sophia?
No, I've been a stay-at-home mom for quite a while.
Oh, that's nice that you were already home. What did
Yeah.
you do before you had children at all, before you were a stay-at-home mom?
I actually have a social work degree.
Oh,
So I've worked at domestic violence and sexual assault center. I
okay.
worked at the state abuse hotline,
Hmm.
and I worked for CPS as a conservatorship worker, reuniting children with their parents or um, getting them a permanent placement.
So you had seen some, I guess, special needs through that, but nothing, I'm guessing, is involved as what you ended up with.
No, none of the kids on my cases were ever medically fragile. I
Okay.
definitely had kids with special needs as far as ADHD or that kind of thing, but nothing like this. No.
Okay. Wow. So this was a whole new world for you. Wow.
Yeah, no experience whatsoever with this.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing how much parents have to learn immediately. It's just like right out of the gate, here you go, figure it out. And
Yeah. I took very, very detailed notes of every little thing that they taught us because I didn't want to get home and not know how to do something to take care of her.
right. When you first came home with her, I know you said you had nursing and all the equipment. Did they
Mhm.
connect you with any kind of peer support or any kind of just kind of general support for you and the rest of your family?
So when we were in the hospital, we were with palliative care,
Good.
and the palliative care social worker, and we didn't ever actually. I think I maybe have met Dr. Horowitz once, but it was I can't remember what they're called, the nurse practitioners um, that were the ones that we communicated with when we had issues that we wanted to address with the doctor, the hospital, whatnot. So I thought it was going to be that way when we came home, that they would continue to be a support. They were for a little while. Um, it just seemed like the few times that I tried to call them about anything, they weren't able to help. Um, so that kind of went away um,
Okay.
pretty fast.
So you're not with palliative anymore?
I haven't talked to them in years, so
Okay. Well, it's a good thing if you don't need them. So I guess
yeah,
that's good and bad. I mean, if they were kind of your main support and then they weren't there, that's not good. But it's good.
yeah.
Wow. So did you ever like get connected with other families like yours? Were there any kind, I know you said Acton's really rare
Mhm.
diagnosis, but have you connected with any other families that have the same diagnosis or similar diagnosis?
I have. There's actually an Emmeline Facebook page, and that's how I was able to connect and see, what other parents were going through. Some of it's with Nimeline, like I said, it's an umbrella, so there's actually different types. Not everyone has actin myopathy. Some of them are different myopathies under that umbrella. Um, but there were some that I found that
Okay.
did have the same diagnosis. Some of them were more severe. Some of them from birth, onset from birth. Some of them, the kids are very mild. Some of them, the kids weren't even diagnosed until they were older. So there's just a whole range of different severities
Okay.
as far as what Sophia has. So it's been good to connect with them, but I feel like I connect more with the parents of there's a tracheostomy a Facebook page. Those groups are more what I kind of lean towards,
Okay.
just because that, even though her diagnosis is actin, we have a trach, we have a vent, so there's a lot of questions that come up with that.
Okay.
And I was actually able to connect with another mom that actually lived in my town, that had a son. Even though he wasn't diagnosed with what we had, he was on a vent. And so she and I became friends. And so that was good. So, I had that. Her son passed away a few years ago. So I don't really ever talk to her much anymore, but it was good to have that for a while.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting that you say that, because I kind of found the same thing with our daughter where, we had her diagnosis and there were support groups for her diagnosis, but I really connected more with people that, had the same equipment or the same symptoms as
Hmm.
opposed to the diagnosis. So I
Yeah.
really get what you're saying. And when you find somebody local, it's really there, there's something just really special about making that connection with somebody that really truly understands what you're going through. So I'm so
Yes.
glad you had that right
Yes.
down. That's wonderful. Wow. So let's see, what are some other good questions. If you were to be able to go back in time, 3 months, an initial 3 months, and tell yourself one thing, what would it be?
Hmm. From the beginning of this, or where?
From the beginning of this, like if you knowing what you know now, could
Mm-hmm.
go back to
Mm-hmm.
the very beginning and give yourself one little tip, what would it be?
To just breathe. To just breathe. I mean, everything was just every day. It was just trying to just survive and worrying about, the next day and the next day, and just breathe, because it's all, I mean, like Pete the cat says, it's all good. I mean, it's just, it's all good. And just breathe. It's
Wow.
all going to work out.
Wow. So if you met a new mom tomorrow that told you that she just had, whether it's a similar diagnosis or
Hmm.
similar symptoms, whichever one she kind of comes to you with,
Hmm.
what would you tell her is the most helpful thing that you found with Sophia?
Well, I mean, the most helpful thing with Sophia, I think, for me has been, oh gosh, and I know that people have different situations, but not having nurses, honestly.
Like the
when
most.
they're not here, when they're not here,
Okay.
I feel so much more at peace. I feel so much more bonded with her,
Okay.
and I know that people have different circumstances. Some people have to work, or some people have little kids, and if I had those issues, I would need to have nursing care more. But since I don't, um, for me, it's been, I wish that I would have not relied on nursing care so much in the beginning,
Okay.
because I feel like I missed out on a lot of bonding time with her.
Okay.
Um, just because I thought that's what I needed. And maybe I did in the beginning, I don't know. But now that I'm doing it on my own so much because we just don't have nurses, I love it. I love it. I
That's
just feel like it's just so much better for us.
wow. So when you say you don't have nurses, is that like recently just with COVID, or has that been kind of over the past year or so? Or like when you say you don't have the nurses right now, I know
Hmm.
it's sometimes hard to fill nursing hours, but
Yeah. Well, that's part of it, is that it's so hard. I mean, I'm one of those that I'm so extremely picky. And so we've probably gone through at least 40 nurses and 3 or 4 different nursing agencies. I'm that mom. Yeah, I'm that mom.
no, you have to be. We were the same way, and we had some nurses that I still talk to all the time that were,
Mhm.
I mean, they became part of our family and they were so
Mhm.
easy, but then some others I was just like, you are not coming in my house.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's
Yes.
nothing in between. So I totally get where you're coming from, and
Mhm.
just filling the hours was so hard because the two that you really liked, couldn't work
Mm-hmm.
days a week, 24 hours a day. It didn't work that way. So
Yeah. Well, when we first came home, about 2 weeks after we came home, we had the most amazing nurse that came in, and she was an older lady. She was probably in her mid 50s, but she was a nurse and she was like a grandma. And so she taught us everything. She showed us that Sophia didn't need to be, not that we were trying to just sit her in front of a TV, but I guess because this was so new to us, we didn't realize the capabilities that she had. And so this nurse, the first day that she came in, she was like, "Is it okay if I turn off the TV?" And she played with her. She brought all kinds of educational toys, and she just showed us everything that we needed to do to get organized. And she was just amazing. Um,
exactly what you needed. Yeah, that's
she just showed us that Sophia is so capable of learning and understanding. And she was with us for 3.5 years and before she had to retire because of her back. And then also we had a nurse that came on, that she was originally our case manager when we came home from the hospital, and probably about 5 months after, she wanted to go back into the nursing field. And so she started working for us, and if I could clone her, I would. She was the most amazing nurse. Like,
oh,
I
wow.
would totally leave her, and not feel anything at all, like worried. If I could have gotten some of her blood before she had to quit so I could clone her, I would have, because she was just so amazing. But she had a knee injury, so after 3.5 years, she had to leave us.
Oh, wow.
And so since that time, I just can't find anybody. Just can't find anybody that is the same. And I'm starting to realize that that's okay. That's okay. I like it this way.
I mean, you're still able to get, a little bit of sleep and a little bit of time to take care of yourself as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we decided to do. I decided to do away with night nurses. It just wasn't working. Sophia's very smart, like I said, and so
Mhm.
she figured out that if mom or dad walk out of the room and there's a nurse in there, mom and dad are probably not going to come back in the room. So she would start crying. And when
Oh,
she starts crying, then she needs cough assist. And so then I'd sit in the room with her, and she'd figure out that if she doesn't fall asleep, mom won't leave. So it's 2 a.m. and she's refusing to go to sleep. And I was like, I can't play this game because I'm exhausted. So we just did away with night nurses, and I sleep in the room with her.
okay.
Um, I do Sunday night through Thursday night. I sleep in the room with her. And then my husband does Friday nights and Saturday nights.
Well,
And it works.
that's what works. Yeah, everybody does their own thing, and yeah,
Yeah.
it works for you. So that's good that you're able to do that. That's really good.
Yeah, I can do that because like I said, I don't have little kids that are waking me up during the night. I don't have to go to work the next morning.
Right.
Sophia's very stable. So she very, very rarely gets sick. So it's not like, I mean, I have to get up 3 or 4 times during the night to, fill up her humidifier chamber on her vent or fill up her feeding bag just to check on her, but it's all good.
Yeah, that's really good. So with COVID, how has that impacted your care with Sophia? And has it made a big change? Or I know a lot of medically fragile families like literally for years. So it's COVID, nothing new for us. Where
Yeah.
going to doctor's appointments is now a whole different world. So kind of what has COVID put on your family? What kind of change?
Well, like you said, it really didn't feel that different, too different in the beginning as far as like isolation, because being a special needs mom, especially of a child that's so medically fragile, I mean, we live in isolation. That's just our
Mhm.
life. But what was so weird about it is for 7 years, we've gone from having therapy 3 or 4 times a week, case manager or different nurses who we were trying out, to suddenly 0 people coming into our house. And it was like, what do we do with all this time?
Right.
It was very weird. And then, the therapists were able to finally get trained on how to use Zoom. So suddenly I'm having to do the therapy through, them giving me directions, at least as far as OTPT.
Okay.
I didn't like that. I'm
Yeah.
not a PT, I'm not an OT. I don't like that. I do it. But when you're trying to tell me, okay, no, move that arm just a little bit this way, or do you feel the muscle moving? I don't know. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. I don't know. When you say move, like, did it twitch? I guess. I mean, I don't know. I didn't like it. So I hated that. I hated having speech through Zoom. Sophia is one of those types that needs face to face. If she doesn't have someone face to face telling her something, she's not going to listen.
Okay.
So we were doing homebound school with the teacher through the school district, and then we had to do Zoom with the teacher, and that was awful. That was awful. I was counting down the days until school was over because it was just me repeating everything that the teacher said to get Sophia to actually do it. So yeah, COVID, as far as all that, it's not been fun. But what I found is that it gave us more time to connect, to be able to just, hey, we can go for a walk. We don't have PT coming in a little bit, or we don't have to get ready for school, or just, it was just like we could just breathe a little bit, and just learning like all the things that she enjoys doing and connecting and bonding. It was nice. It's been hard though, because we were right in the middle of Sophia has scoliosis because of her low muscle tone.
Okay.
So we were just about to go take her to the orthopedist to make an appointment to get her admitted to have a serial cast put on her back, just because we're trying to avoid surgery right now. Well, with COVID, we can't take her out, can't take her to the doctor appointment, can't obviously take her into the OR
No.
to get the cast on.
Okay.
So that's been very frustrating because she needs it. We were able to do trach clinic by telemed, GI by telemed, which is a huge blessing because we drive an hour for GI to sit in the doctor's office for 5 minutes for her and I to say, everything's great, see you in another year, and then come back another year. And
So television, that sounds really good then. Yeah. But,
yeah, in fact, she said she wants to keep doing that unless something comes up.
oh, yay. I've heard people say that their doctors want to stay on telemed.
Yeah, well, I mean, trying to get a child out who's on a ventilator, who's immobile.
Yeah.
We don't have a wheelchair van, so
Oh, wow.
yeah. Sophia's 53 pounds. Well, my husband carries her. I can't carry her anymore. I used to carry her out to the car and put her in the car seat, and either the nurse or me or my husband would sit in the back with her while we'd go to the appointment. But I can't carry her anymore. She's just too heavy for me.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, not having to break his back to get her in to the car for one less appointment, and then loading up all the equipment, and then getting there, and then unloading all the equipment, and then getting her out, it's exhausting. So
Yeah.
one less appointment that we have to do that. Woohoo!
Okay.
Yeah, so COVID, I mean, it's been a blessing. Not that I want to call it a blessing because it's not a blessing, but it has been kind of a blessing. And then too, the world is kindly see that what it's like for those of us who are isolated. Suddenly everything's online, and it's kind of opened up another little avenue for those who are stuck at home to be able to join in with the things of this world, just virtual classes and stuff like that. So but yeah, I would really like to be able to get her into her appointment to get that cast on. And in fact, we took her last week. Was it last week? While my husband was on vacation to get x-rays in our town. And we were hoping to go ahead now that they had said elective surgery would be
Right.
allowed again, and now they've shut it down again.
I know. Yeah. Hopefully it won't be down for long, but yeah, I know. It's such a mess out there.
Well, eventually it's going to be where it's not going to be an elective. It's going to be, we're going to have to do it.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what kind of risk that she'll be at putting her in the hospital going on. So yeah.
Yeah. It's scary. When all of this first started, I know a lot of, I mean, like you said, everything was online. And so I know a lot of companies were having delays in their shipping. Did you have
Hmm.
any issues getting like all of her supplies delivered on time?
I didn't have anything that was delayed as far as being on time. We did get notice of a few things that were going to be less. We have what's called a vent filter
Mhm.
that's we change out weekly on our ventilator, and because they were being used so many in so many hospitals, they told us that the supply was just not as much. So we would be getting, instead of 4, we'd only be getting 2 of those, and they told us not to change it out unless we absolutely had to. The thing
Oh,
that was frustrating for me is because Sophia is completely vent dependent, because we live enough of a distance away from the children's hospital. She's qualifies for a backup ventilator. So I got a text from our DME that does our respiratory supplies asking if we would be okay if they picked up her backup ventilator if there was a shortage.
no.
No,
Yeah,
it's
no.
not okay. I was not happy that they even asked me that. My
Yeah.
child's life depends on her ventilator, and if her primary one goes out, I mean, we would have to be bagging her all the way to Dell Children's Hospital.
Where they may or may
And
not have a ventilator for her. Yeah,
right. Yeah. So I was a little upset, to
I
say
would
the
have
least,
been upset.
that they
Yeah.
would even think to ask. In fact, when I told our Star Kids case manager, she made sure that they knew, don't ever ask
Yeah,
for her clients. Don't ever ask for their backup ventilators, because if they have one, it's because they need it.
exactly. Yeah. And there's so many little pieces in those that can break. And
Yes.
you can't go without that if your kid relies on it to live.
Yes.
No, I would have been furious. I would have been right there with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Mama Bear came out for that one.
I get it. I would have done the same. Wow. Is there anything else about Sophia's story or about just kind of your life as a special needs parent that you'd like to tell other parents or other?
Uh, it is. It is lonely. It is lonely. But it's the friends that you make, oddly enough, that are thousands of miles away on Facebook, that also have a child has something similar or is on a ventilator. Those are just the most amazing connections, and it's just like we're on our own little world, and it's hard because a lot of them pass away. But you still just have that connection that's always going to be there. I don't know. I guess the main thing that I would say is don't rely on the nurses that they know what they're doing. These nursing agencies, when they send a nurse, don't assume that these nurses that they're sending are qualified. I've found that probably 95% of them, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they're doing. That would be my biggest thing, is just that, just make sure that these nurses truly know. I don't believe Sophia would be alive if I would have left her with some of these nurses. We've had some things that happened that just, if I had not been there, I don't think that she would be alive.
Wow.
Um, so just don't rely on them to know what they're doing, to make sure that before you leave the hospital that you're ready, that you're trained, and that you can do it. You're not going to be an expert the moment you come home,
Yeah.
um, but you will become an expert. You will
Right.
become an expert, and you will know more than some of those nurses that come in.
Right. You know more than the nurses, than the doctors. Yeah, exactly. You know more about what's going on with Sophia than anybody in the world. So,
I guess my other thing would be, especially for someone like Sophia who's not able to be verbal, is be her voice, be their voice, be your child's voice. Don't be afraid to fight for them. Don't be afraid to be seen as that parent, that difficult parent. I'm not afraid of that. I don't care. I mean, I've
Yeah.
had to fight with the school. I've had to fight with insurance, DMEs, doctors. I'm her voice, and I will fight for her for whatever she needs, for whatever I feel like she deserves. Because no matter what your child's capability is, they're still capable. Always assume capability. And they have a right to have an education. They have a right to have whatever medical equipment they need. They have a right to be able to live um, a good life, to be able to do things.
Thing I absolutely agree with. These kids are amazing, and as their parent, we just have to find a way to help them show the rest of the world how great they really are. So, wow. You're doing an amazing job, and Sophia is
Yeah. Thank
a
you.
girl. So thank you so much for sharing her story. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for letting me do